And that's where we start with breaking news live at Mar-a-Lago. This is Celebrity Apprentice White House Edition Season 2 going on right now at Mar-a-Lago. Additions underway to be in Donald Trump's cabinet. The names coming out today: Michael Waltz, as you just heard, as National Security Advisor. That does not require Senate confirmation. Elise Stefanik, UN Ambassador. That does. Tom Homan, Border Czar, but not the Secretary of Homeland Security. Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff. Again, not requiring Senate confirmation. Lee Zeldin, Environmental Protection Agency, along with Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff, who was announced on Thursday. So the cast is becoming apparent as you see Nikki Haley, Mike Pompeo out. With that, we welcome you to the Ferris Network on television. And first tonight, one of my favorite movies, Top Gun. A week later, everyone is still trying to explain why Trump won, as if it's some huge mystery. Truth is, 2 years ago, America told us Trump would win. We just didn't listen. It was the height of vaccine mandates. Remember that? The DEI Olympics, defund the police, microaggressions, unlimited and unquestioned Ukraine aid. Boys can be girls. The left rammed all of that down everyone's throats. You had to obey. If you didn't obey, they would cancel you. At the same time, Top Gun Maverick came out. It was the first movie you could see post-pandemic. Roll the tape.
You are not my first choice. You are here at the request of Admiral Kazansky, a.k.a. Iceman. He seems to think that you have something left to offer the Navy. What that is, I can't imagine.
With all due respect, sir, I'm not a teacher. Just want to manage expectations.
Remember that? Tom Cruise, white, middle-aged guy, is the hero. America was back. Dare I say American exceptionalism was back. It was more than a blockbuster hit. It was a blockbuster explosion. Hundreds of millions of dollars in ticket sales. The famous line from Andrew Breitbart is that politics is downstream from culture. The culture backlash to wokeism didn't start last Tuesday. It started with Top Gun. People voted first with their money at the box office, and then last week at the ballot box. But there is more to it. Last week, we told you that one ad, just one, explained the election. We told you this on Wednesday. Since then, the New York Times, a bunch of other folks have followed suit. That's okay. It was Trump's closing ad, and it mostly consisted of Kamala Harris, in her own words.
Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
Hell no, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that.
Kamala supports transgender sex changes in jail with our money.
Kamala even supports letting biological men compete against our girls in their sports. Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you.
The election autopsy continues to miss the point of Donald Trump's ad. Harris is for they, them, and Trump is for you. They, them is a proxy for the elites who demand allegiance to their worldview. Without allegiance, you become a deplorable. They, them tell you. If you don't want boys and girls sports, you're transphobic. They, them tell you. If you want a secure border, you're xenophobic. They, them tell you. If you don't want to defund the police, you are racist. They, them tell you, if you don't believe in unlimited aid to Ukraine, you are now pro-Putin. They, them tell you, if you don't want a mandated vaccine, you are anti-science. They, them told you, if you don't want Donald Trump locked up, you are anti-democracy. In this election, you spoke about immigration, about inflation, and about being force-fed an agenda. People are starting to understand this. We'll give the New York Times and CNN and everybody else a little more time to catch up. But it's basic. In fact, the panelists on CNN have not caught up. They simply now cannot understand why you don't like being lectured by they, them. And the Democrats still do not want to give an inch of orthodoxy.
I think there are a lot of families out there who don't believe boys should play girls' sports.
They're not boys. I'm not going to listen to transphobia at this table. I am not going to listen to you call a trans girl a boy.
Are you going to allow me to finish my explanation?
When you use a word that's a slur, I'm going to interrupt. That's not how it is. They're not boys.
All right. Others get it. Maureen Dowd, for her part, wrote in the New York Times, woke is broke. You think? One thing that makes Democrats great is they unabashedly support groups that have suffered from inequality. But they have to begin avoiding extreme policies that alienate many Americans who would otherwise be drawn to the party. Democrats learned the hard way in this election that mothers care both about abortion rights and having their daughters compete fairly and safely on the playing field. But Top Gun taught us something. It's more than just boys and girls sports. It's a rebellion against woke culture. It's a rebellion against the elites, the they, them, that demand all of us bow to the altar of progressive ideology. But almost every political commentator missed this trend and continues to. Paul Ann Leitner did not miss this trend because he studies religion, culture, science, and philosophy. He's the author of Disordered, Lies About Human Nature and the Truth That Sets Us Free. And Paul is with us now. He pointed out the Top Gun reference that we talked about at the top. Paul, good to see you. Thank you. Help us understand, between Top Gun doing well at the box office and last week's election, what are the cultural touchstones?
Yeah, I'm not a political expert. In fact, typically my practice is to, no offense to anybody in your line of work, but I tend to steer clear of cable news until like a week leading up to the election.
Look at how young you look. You look young, you look healthy, you look happy.
Yeah, it's like, some people should steer clear of alcohol and some people can have it in moderation. I found for my own health, I tend to steer clear of it. So I was really surprised as I started to watch the election coverage that week and the night of the election, how shocked people were at how much the culture had changed. And to me, it was actually, if you study culture and you study cultural texts, you see the stories that are coming out of Hollywood and coming out of other studios, you can start to see that there's been a shift in culture. Leland, when we were kids, our parents, when they wanted to pass down to us what they thought we should know about what is true, good, and beautiful, how we should live in the world, they didn't sit us down with like a PowerPoint file or an Excel spreadsheet and start talking data. They gave us stories. They gave us Aesop's fables. They maybe gave you Bible stories. They maybe even shared with you comic books and movies. I know in my house, it was like seeing Star Wars for the first time. That's how my parents and most of our parents wanted to transmit their values to us. And that's the best way to do it. In fact, that's the way all cultures and all civilizations have done it from the dawn of civilization. They have passed on what we could call guiding stories or myths. So what I do is I try to look at the trends in our guiding stories and start to see, are there changes in the way that we are telling stories? And I'm looking for evidence in the changes in values that we see embedded in those stories. And that takes a little bit of theological and philosophical acumen to start to dig through these stories and go, yeah, this isn't just entertainment. This is why people spend all this money on this stuff and they fill theaters, is because it's giving them some sense of, hey, maybe this is how I should live in the world in a particular way. Sure, it might not be directly correlated to you being Maverick and a fighter jet pilot, but there are things that Top Gun communicated, the original and the sequel communicated about, some traditional American values like meritocracy, that the individual has access to the truth and can stand up against not competent and sometimes even corrupt institutions above them and do what was right, even in the face of those institutions. So once you start seeing this stuff, I'm telling you, you don't need to actually look at the polls. I don't think you need to be a professional political analyst. As Bob Dylan's saying, it doesn't take a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. And so if you read cultural texts, you see movies, you see television, you start digging a little more deeply, you start to notice these changes. And I think we've seen some pretty substantial changes, some of which you've mentioned with in Top Gun and in other stories that we're seeing across our culture.
Okay, I could talk to you for the whole show. Unfortunately, we can't. But I could talk to you for the whole show about this because I think you were really on to something. You said a word that I thought was really important, and I wrote it down, which was traditional. That this was not, and Bill O'Reilly, who's coming up later, will tell us, this was not a tradition, this was not a left versus right, red versus blue election. It was a traditional versus progressive election. And in terms of themes that are coming back into people's minds, people were tired of apologizing for America. They love America. They are American exceptionalists. We were told for a long time, even by Barack Obama for 8 years, that wasn't necessarily a good thing. America should lead from behind, on and on and on. Top Gun Maverick certainly came back. It scratched that itch, if you will. It filled that void of American exceptionalism. And then on Wednesday morning, when he accepted or gave his victory speech, Donald Trump had this to say about July 4th, 2 years from now. Take a listen.
3 years from now, the United States will celebrate the biggest and most important milestone in our country's history. 250 years of American independence. What a great country. And we have to keep it that way. But that's why, as a nation, we should be preparing for a most spectacular birthday party. We want to make it the best of all time.
Okay, Donald Trump's a great showman. He's a great TV guy because he understands culture. Is that what's happening? The pendulum of American exceptionalism swinging back?
I mean, that could be part of it. I do think a broader thrust is that most people, if you were my age, I was born in 1983. If you're my age or younger, your native tongue that, your pop cultural native tongue that you were born into was this tendency towards deconstructing stories, deconstructing tradition. It was the critique of values. And you kind of get to the point where once you've torn the entire house down to the studs, you start to realize, I have to live someplace and I have to pick a story. And so I think for many people, my generation and younger, what they started looking for was a story that they could actually live in that affirmed meaning, it affirmed truth, goodness, and beauty. I'm not a partisan politician. I am not an expert in politics by any means, but what I could tell you is that lots and lots of young people are looking for things like wholesomeness again. I know it sounds absurd, but they're looking for, I was the guy back in 2023 that said, hey, watch out. We're going to see the rise of Creed. The band is going to become popular again. I started noticing these trends on TikTok. These unironic Gen Z kids, unironically, or maybe we could say even post-ironically, listening to the band Creed, a band that was critiqued in the early 2000s for being syrupy corporate butt rock. But now they are listening, and I would say again, a post-ironic sincerity because they just want to feel something positive again. They want to feel something meaningful again. They're embracing the cringe, a generation that their whole life has been told, you have to be on watch for cringe. You don't want to be caught doing anything cringy because that could get you posted online everywhere. You could be viral everywhere, and that would ruin your life. And I think the exhaustion of that, the exhaustion of the constant chaos that comes with deconstruction is leading people to go, hey, I'm open to exploring tradition, whether it's traditional religion, whether it's traditional guiding stories, whether it's traditional holidays and practices. I think that's really what's driving the real interest in more traditional expressions of culture.
Okay, so Paul, I love everything you're saying, and I'm going to have to ask you to keep the next answer a little bit brief because I only got about 45 seconds. But we've covered on this show a lot this move, especially of young men, high school, college, 18 to 35, back to traditional values. All of a sudden, they are now more interested in sort of bro culture, being a man of the house, getting married young. You said religion. We're seeing a lot of young men move back to religion. Is that what they're picking up on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I do think men in particular have felt a unique expression of the meaning crisis that has affected them in ways where we have seen rising statistics in especially men committing suicide over the last decade or so. And I think men in particular have felt like the story that's been told about their life has primarily been portrayed as a negative story, that we are primarily the problem. And I think there's been a counter point to that, a counter revolution, if you will. It's more so in the online spaces of podcasting, YouTube, et cetera, where men are actually being affirmed and saying, hey, no, you have a role to play, and it's a positive role. Why don't you step into that role and you can make something of your life?
Paul, absolutely fascinating analysis. And look, unlike anything you're going to get on television, you talked about the political analysts being weathermen. Weathermen and political analysts are right about the same amount of time. So thank you for being with us. And we're going to have you back. This is a great conversation, one we need to keep at. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Got some breaking news coming up on the other side of the break about control of the House of Representatives. Also this, President-elect Trump promised to make the world safer, the way we can have national security without forever wars.
It's not that we're scared to go into war. It's not that we're not fit. It's that we don't believe in the government of a Kamala Harris, of Joe Biden. If we were to be drafted under them, that we're actually fighting a righteous war.
Back now with major breaking news and a race call to announce this evening. Decision Desk HQ can now project that Republicans will keep control of the House of Representatives. That means they will have at least 218 seats, Democrats at 209. So still another 10 or 11 seats to call. This is enormous. That means Republicans will control the House, the Senate, and the White House. It will have a major impact on how Donald Trump will be able to govern, has a major pick in terms of who he is able to pick for his cabinet, from how the Senate will confirm those cabinet picks. Also a major influence on what kind of legislation he can get through, with Republicans now controlling the House of Representatives. That means a Republican majority leader in the Senate and now a Republican Speaker of the House when Donald Trump takes office on January 20th. Also breaking in the past couple of minutes, news that Michael Waltz, Republican congressman of Florida, former Green Beret, will be Trump's national security advisor. The more seats Republicans get in the House, the more people from the House Donald Trump can pick to serve in his administration. Michael Waltz, Elise Stefanik right now are the two. It'd be hard to imagine Republicans picking a lot more out of the House until we get the full election results. Speaking of national security advisor, John Bolton served as Trump's national security advisor in the first administration and joins us now. Ambassador, good to see you. Thank you, sir. I know Mike Waltz, full disclosure, is a friend of mine. I feel like this, Elise Stefanik, Susie Wiles, this is probably about as team normal as you get when it comes to Donald Trump picks.
Well, I think Elise, whom I've known for many years, can certainly do a fine job at the UN, and I think Mike Waltz will be a fine national security advisor. I should probably say I'll be for him or against him, whichever would help me more, given my relationship with his boss. It's interesting that, you know, Mike was speculated about to be Secretary of Defense, and obviously he's not going to get that job, but neither's Tom Cotton, who took his name out, nor Mike Pompeo, who was publicly slapped by Trump yesterday, but who had been mentioned for the job. So it really opens the question, who is going to get the Secretary of Defense job? It's I don't mean to bring the competitors in, but NBC is now reporting that Bill Hagerty, senator from Tennessee, is no longer in contention for a cabinet job, joining the Haley-Pompeo group. Hagerty who did a fine job as ambassador to Japan, I should say, in Trump's first term, was considered for state and commerce, even Treasury. So it's just interesting that you've got some picks, that's true. You've got three rejections, in effect, who I would count primarily in the team normal category. So I'm not sure what this necessarily tells us this early on.
Fair enough. I guess it tells us that at least so far early on, that's where Donald Trump's head is. We put a graphic up of the unusual wartime kitchen cabinet because Donald Trump comes in, he's a wartime president. North Korea is getting frisky. You've got Ukraine, obviously, is a real war. You've got the war in the Middle East. People surrounding him at Mar-a-Lago, Tucker Carlson, Rick Grinnell. We have Trump up there, but he's obviously the president-elect. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, Vivek Ramaswamy. They are the anti-forever wars. And if if there is a poster child of the person that they say is the face of forever wars, it is you, sir. And I don't think you would quibble with that assertion. This is the question. Can we have national security? And can America regain its position as a dominant force in the world without what they call forever wars, what you might call American interventionism?
Well, I think these labels are all very misleading, and I think a lot of what at least some of those people you showed up there do is address all this in very glib, superficial political terms, not in terms of strategic analysis. I think the real answer is right in front of us. I think Ronald Reagan practiced it. It is peace through strength, that too is a slogan, but it was backed up with very significant defense expenditures and a willingness to use force if necessary. I think deterrence has broken down in many respects since Reagan, and I think we're paying the price for it now. But this idea that somehow you can talk about complex international situations through a few lines in political speeches, which is what I see in many of these people, is very dangerous. So I would count on people like Mike Waltz, who really can do the analysis, to be a voice for a real peace through strength approach, if that's what Trump wants to follow. I don't think we know what Trump wants to do. A lot of people are speaking for him. I don't think we know because, as usual, I don't think Trump really knows.
Well, he does tend to have competing thoughts in his head. Peace through strength, one thing Ronald Reagan certainly pushed was our allies also beefing up their defense spending. Taiwan considering big U.S. defense purchases as overture to Donald Trump. Taipei wants to show new administration it is serious about protecting itself against China. Our allies stepping up, I guess, is unquestionably a good thing, isn't it?
Sure, there's no doubt about it. But a lot of this has been going on quite independently of Donald Trump. He certainly raised the question of NATO allies spending more on defense and pressed it hard. That's a good thing. The problem is with Trump, I think he doesn't understand fundamentally what collective defense is about, and he uses the failure of too many NATO members to spend at the agreed-upon level not as a way to strengthen NATO, not as a bargaining tool, which is what some people say, but because he basically thinks we defend the Europeans, we don't get anything out of it, and they don't pay us. That's not how it works. We are benefited by having NATO allies. We're benefited by having allies like Japan and Korea. And good alliances end up with all the parties to them being better off. That's why the saying goes, whether it was Churchill or Napoleon who said it, the only thing worse than managing allies is not having allies to manage.
Fair. And you're right to point out which one of them said it, we don't know. Mr. Ambassador, it's always good to see you, sir. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Glad to be with you.
Donald Trump, as he picks his ever-growing cabinet, is prioritizing loyalty. What kind of team is he building? When we come back. I've looked at Mar-a-Lago. You might call it additions for the Trump cabinet, with Elon Musk as the casting director. Celebrity Apprentice White House Edition Season 2. Elon Musk, as the casting director, has certainly caught the attention of CNN.
Multiple sources tell me tonight that Musk has been seen at Mar-a-Lago nearly every single day since Donald Trump won, dining with him on the patio at times. Today, they were seen on the golf course together. Musk has been in the room when world leaders have called Trump. And tonight, we've learned he's also weighing in on staffing decisions, making clear his preference for certain roles even.
All right. Today, we received confirmation. More members of the Trump cabinet, or at least Inner Circle, announced. Elise Stefanik, UN ambassador. Tom Homan, border czar. Stephen Miller, deputy chief of policy. Lee Zeldin, Environmental Protection Agency. Mike Waltz, national security advisor. Susie Wiles is running the show as chief of staff. We are still waiting on Secretary of State, Treasury Secretary, Attorney General, and more. With that, we bring in Bill O'Reilly himself, anchor of the No Spin News, author of Confronting the President's No Spin Assessments from Washington to Biden. As you researched the presidents, what is your advice to Donald Trump in picking a cabinet?
Well, I always go for the best and the brightest. You know, it's a cliche, but you want people with perception. You want people to speak their mind. You want people with experience in the sense that they've been in the arena before, so they won't panic and they don't have to rely on advisors. Strong cabinet is always a plus for any president of the United States. In fact, you can trace the success of most presidents who have done well to their top 3 or 4 advisors. And the ones who went down the drain, like Jimmy Carter, for example, is a really good example of people who he hired cronies and people with no federal experience, and they had nothing to bring. But I think Donald Trump's been around the block enough now where he knows that.
Is cronies another word for sycophants, if we're going to sort of compare or contrast? Obviously not someone who's not sold nearly as many books as you have. Doris Kearns Goodwin's writing about Lincoln, your favorite president, the team of rivals versus the team of cronies.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to generalize in this area. I think Donald Trump is a man who wants loyalty and punishes disloyalty if he feels you're disloyal.
Is that a good thing?
Supporting. You know, look, is it a good thing? I like loyal people around me because, you know, I know what disloyal people can do. They can hurt you. They can bring disruption. They can leak stuff that's not true. They can do a lot of damage. So is that a character flaw that I want loyal people? I think that you can find both. I respect people who speak their mind. I think Donald Trump does as well, but not all the time. Does that make sense? You know, there's sometimes when he wants to be told that he's the greatest. And I think that's a human trait. Sometimes you're kind of feeling down. You want to be brought up.
Fair enough. You think about President Trump, President-elect Trump, now entering into this fray of the Senate Majority Leader. That happens on Wednesday. It was either John Thune or John Cornyn. Now, all of a sudden, Rick Scott, senator from Florida, has risen up because of Donald Trump's closest advisors. The MAGA conclave has decided that they don't like John Cornyn or John Thune. And Rick Scott is their man. This is the betting odds on who will get it, Thune and Scott. The long knives are out for Thune. Here is Rick Scott on his loyalty promises to Donald Trump. Take a listen.
Here's what I bring to the table. I clearly believe in the Trump agenda, number one. I'm a business guy that has success doing exactly what we need to do in the Senate. So I'm very optimistic that I'm going to win because I'm representing Trump's agenda and what my colleagues want.
Is there a danger to Donald Trump in picking people who are not necessarily the best for the job, but who they promise this kind of unquestioned loyalty?
Yeah, I guess you could bring hacks in, I guess. But look, It doesn't matter whether it's Scott or Thune or who's the third. I don't even pay attention to these political parties because it gives me a massive headache. It'll probably be Scott because he's got a personal relationship with Trump and he's simpatico with him. Trump likes business people and all that. But it doesn't matter because whoever the Senate Majority Leader is going to go along with President Trump. It's just like Johnson in the House. Johnson's not going to buck Trump. Trump's got 2 years. Talk about a dictator on first day. He's got 2 years. If he stays focused on what he believes the country has to have to be prosperous, he'll pass almost everything. There's not one congressperson now that'll be in dissent on the Republican side. Not one. And I don't think there are any Democratic congresspeople who will vote for anything that Trump says. But you don't need them. And the same thing in the Senate. All of those 53 or 4 Republican senators, they're going along with it. This is a unique time for Donald Trump in history. Really unique. And, you know, the guy who was the only other non-consecutive president, Grover Cleveland, he walked in, Congress hated him. And he vetoed 144 bills in his second term. And they were, most of them, overridden. Trump's got a free field, a free fire zone to do exactly what he wants to do. Now, let's see if that is going to improve the nation. But that's where we are.
So free fire zone to do whatever he wants to do. You say that there's not going to be a single Republican defection. NewsNation was the first to call the presidency, also the first to call that Republicans will keep control of the House, 7:30 or so, 7:25 today. Decision Desk HQ projecting that Republicans will keep the House of Representatives by the thinnest of margins. You're saying there's not going to be one defection. So the question is, are Republicans under Donald Trump's leadership able to accept good rather than fight amongst themselves over perfect? And you still have to get votes in the Senate for anything you want to do.
Yeah, but it's only Murkowski and Collins in the Senate that might give Trump a little
You got to get to 60 votes. You got to get to 60 votes.
Well, not really. I mean, if there's somebody going to filibuster on the Democratic side, you got to get to 60 to override it. But there are ways around that now. There are plenty of ways around it. I'm not worried about that. I want Donald Trump to put forth 5 or 6 really solid bills that are almost unopposable. Border, immigration, taxation, extend the Trump tax cuts, basic decency in the Justice Department, sanctuary cities, these kinds of things. Wipe out. You did a woke thing. And one of the reasons that Trump won was because most Americans, by a large majority, hate this woke stuff. In my website, BillO'Reilly.com, I'm selling not woke stuff. It is the fastest moving stuff we have ever had in 27 years of BillO'Reilly.com. People want the shirts and they want the mug, not woke. They've had it with it. It's insane. Now, Trump can't pass not woke legislation because it's a personal preference. But what he can do is pass laws that make it very difficult for the progressives to intrude on personal freedom and to create chaos. And these bills have to be very well worded so that they get around the federal challenges in court, and they have to be presented in a very cogent way to the American public. If Trump does that, he's going to go down in history as one of the greatest presidents because he can stop the madness culturally here. And it is madness. Now, have people say, yeah, let Barry, who's now Barbie, go into the high school girls' locker room. That's madness, all right? So stop it somehow. Find out how and do it, because you're not going to have, and if the Democrats oppose that, they'll destroy themselves even further. The party's already on the ropes. It has no leader. Who's the leader of the Democratic Party? Who?
Yeah,
no one.
No, you're right. There's few people who have been better at getting their political opponents to do stupid things than Donald Trump. He is a master at it. It's one of his skills.
Bill, Oh, I see. You say there's few people who can goad the opposition into doing stupid things.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
He's a master.
I agree with that.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Bill. We'll talk soon.
All right, I'm sending you some not woke stuff, and I want you to wear it on your program.
No, but I appreciate it. I'll make some good stocking stuffers for my in-laws. They'll love it.
Yeah, Sunday,
Bill, thank you.
You're going to give it away, I see. All right.
Regifting, spreading the wealth. All right. Warnotes.com tomorrow, the new attack against Latinos by the progressive left. Some really wild stuff happening and being said about the very people that the progressive left said that they were protecting, immigrants. That's in War Notes tomorrow, 4 p.m. Subscribe for free at warnotes.com. Also see you on social media at Leland Vittert. Democrats are finally realizing 2024 was the election of they, them versus you. Is it too late for them to get on the right side of the culture war issues? Bill O'Reilly was just talking about them that are defining American politics. Happens when you lose. They're fighting about the culture wars, why they lost, where they're going from here. The only thing they can agree on is that Donald Trump is bad. North Carolina Congressman Wiley Nickel had a proposal today in the Washington Post. What should Democrats do now? Form a shadow cabinet. The venerable British institution of the opposition would serve America well today. With a shadow cabinet, there is no hiding. Each decision by the government faces a ready counterpoint, not just from the media and voters, but also from political leaders poised to, in parentheses, theoretically step in. All right. Representative Wiley Nichols is with us now. Good to see you, Congressman. Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it. Kamala Harris just ran a campaign on opposing Donald Trump. She lost. Is that really a winning strategy for the next 2 years?
I think opposing Donald Trump on policy is a winning strategy. That's the focus, and that's what my opinion piece was all about. How do we respond to Donald Trump? Zone defense, it's not going to work. We got to go man on man. And every time he appoints someone to the cabinet, we should have someone in our own version of the British system, a shadow cabinet, to take that spot, not just to talk about this stuff that, we're against, but what we're for. And that's the piece that I really want to get out there, because we got great ideas and we got great messengers, and we need to borrow from the British to do this.
Well, we could go to the shouting in Prime Minister's questions, right? You can just imagine the House chamber if Donald Trump showed up every Wednesday. This I thought was interesting, though, from Seth Moulton, who has a slightly different idea on this. Take a listen.
We have a wing of our party that shames us, that tries to cancel people who even bring up these difficult topics, and frankly shames voters. This is the same group of people who told us to defund the police, who told us that there wasn't a problem at the southern border, who told us that inflation was transient, whatever that means, and who told us that Biden was just fine. And they're out of touch with voters.
Some of the people you listed in your shadow cabinet are on that list that'd be pretty close to being out of touch with where the middle of America that you need to get back is.
I think we're a big ticket, we're a big tent party. We got a lot of people.
Well, not a lot of people inside the tent, right? I mean, somehow they left at intermission.
Well, I think the point of this is, having a lot of folks talking about specific policies, and to Seth's point, I don't think it was really culture wars that was my takeaway from this election. It was kitchen table issues, because we won in state after state after state on the same ballot that Trump won. You're talking about Senate candidates in Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina. We won our governor's race.
That wasn't hard, but okay.
But I guess
isn't cultural issues, and I'll give you the last word, but isn't part of the problem that Democrats didn't realize cultural issues of especially boys and girls sports, which we've said is a proxy for a lot of things, that is a kitchen table issue?
Well, I think they were proxies for a lot of things. And first and foremost, it was D.C. elites telling people how to live their lives, what to do.
That is a kitchen table issue.
And I think that's something that we didn't do well enough in, and we obviously lost. But it was a really close election. We saw the candidates who worked just as hard as the American people work, just as hard as the middle class works, who were successful because they campaigned on those kitchen table issues as Democrats. So that was my takeaway. I take a lot of hope for really a mixed verdict. Obviously Trump won. We talk about Trump and Harris, but a ton of other Democrats won too because they embraced that.
All right. Congressman, good to see you, sir. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Kamala Harris is out of money. In fact, her campaign is in debt. When we come back, the secret to blowing through $1 billion, still losing, and who she's not paying. See you in a minute. I got an email from Team Kamala Harris. They're asking for money, get a couple a day. The subject of the email is, quote, "Is there anything we can say?" The email goes on to beg for cash for their fight fund. They are $20 million in debt after blowing through more than $1 billion and still losing. With us now, NewsNation correspondent Rich McHugh. Hi, Rich.
Hi, Leland. So earlier I spoke with Lindy Lee. She's on the DNC Finance Committee. She's based here in Philadelphia. She's raised millions for Biden and for Harris. She says, look, this wasn't just a loss. This was a shellacking. The DNC is in serious chaos right now. Expect some departures. She said some staffers on the Harris campaign that she's spoken to haven't been paid. She called this whole thing a $1 billion boondoggle. And these celebrity endorsements that they paid for did nothing to move the needle. Take a listen. What is going on in the leadership in the DNC right now? Is it in turmoil? Are people leaving?
It's absolutely in turmoil. People are stepping down.
Now, she said we can expect some big-time donors leaving the DNC in the very near future. She wouldn't say exactly how many. I said, look, you're brave to speak up. Do you have any arrows coming at you? She said, not just no arrows. She said, I have high-level support from high-level Dems. Tell them to keep going.
Well, there's arrows going at everybody inside the Democratic Party. Rich, thank you. So many questions about exactly how much money was spent on Oprah and some of the other big celebrities who endorsed Harris. Here's Chris.